Welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin Candland. I'm here with Jordan Olmshied. He is a window washer, writer of the Wealth Letters, and also working on a bunch of other different things. Lover of basketball. He's a wife, couple kids. Just pumped to have him on. Man of faith. Yeah, let's go.
Love it. Thanks for having me on, Dallin. I've been following you for a while now, and we chatted a little bit before interviewing here, and just kind of where you're at and the journey you're on. So it's just fun to be able to get on here and chat with you for a little bit.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, I realized that is one of the most wonderful blessings you can have is just to have somebody just to tell you like, hey, keep up the good work. And, that's something that you kind of swooped on the scene. We both listened to Danny Miranda's podcast, at least a pretty good amount, and then somehow we got connected through that. And then bam, we're just talking and it's been fun, man.
Yeah, it has been. And you had Danny on. You interviewed Danny. So I mean that's I gotta say kudos to you for that, to be able to bring him on and chat with him that early in your journey with your podcast. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
I really like talking to him. I really like listening to him. And I feel like I've spent a lot of time with him, even if I haven't like met him in person or anything like that. And so I have a deep respect for him. So, but yeah, I wanted to get him on pretty badly and it worked out. So I'm excited to have him on in the future, hopefully. But yeah.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of curious. So let's talk a little bit about like there's words and words are so powerful and they can like say so much about what you want to do with your life. And I think we could all have so many things that come to mind are things we want to say and we say them, but really it comes down to the action because the action speaks louder than the words. Like you were here before me in this Zoom meeting. Like I remember on Twitter, you were like, hey, I listened to your episode and I listened to this and I want to have you in my wealth letters. And so it's like, not only were you saying these things, but you're also taking these actions. So speak a little bit to that if you would.
Yeah. You know, I've kind of found just in my journey, whether that's with my relationship with my wife or my kids, in my occupation, whatever it is, I obviously we need to know that we need to choose our words wisely, and we need to, kind of massage what we're saying depending on the situation or who we're talking to, and those are good things to do. But I found that when I can do that, but then I have to back it up. When I say to my wife that I understand you voiced to me the other day that I'm kind of working a lot of hours and you feel like maybe our relationship is we're growing apart a little bit. It's easy enough for me to say, yeah, honey, I know I'll work on it. But if I don't have that action, that follow through, it's kind of just empty words. And so I understand the importance of choosing our words wisely, but again, just kind of trying your best to make sure that you follow that up with action.
Well, they have such a ridiculous amount of power because they can like sit in your mind and they can influence how you think, which can influence how you feel. I mean, people can throw whatever, shade at it. But I mean, seriously, you think about some of the TV shows and things that you watch or different things, a lot of that you can pull out at the drop of a hat. It's like you pull your hand into the hat of your previous life experience and you can feel so like I could think of a really joyful memory right now, and I would probably feel more joyful than I do in this moment, even though I do feel relatively pretty joyful.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Just going off of what you said about words, I listen to podcasts a lot. Obviously, I listen to you. I listen to different podcasts just with my line of work. I have a lot of flexibility to be able to do that during the day. And I just listened to a podcast by a rabbi, Marty Solomon is his name, so Jewish scholar, and he was just talking how, you know, the Eastern way of thinking is so much different than the Western way of thinking, and how we, with Western thinking, we kind of are like all about the end result, the why, the how, why is it this way? Where the Eastern way of thinking is more about the process, more about, the journey, if you will. And he just said how Eastern thinkers attach so much power to words, where we as Western, we're kind of, again, we look at the facts, we look at the actions. And so it was just interesting to kind of think about the marriage between the words and the actions, because we might think actions are more important, but at the end of the day, it really truly starts the root of the words.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, the Eastern Western thing. I had somebody on, and I believe it's an interview that's not out yet, but he talked about how just kind of that same thing. Like there's this like hustle, there's this whatever in the West, but then there's like the peaceful mindfulness sort of vibe from the East with the Indian tribes and monks and all that stuff. And the beautiful thing is that it can come together as like this like kind of this marriage of ideals and perspectives, so you can really get the best of both worlds. And I think that is kind of a little bit of a microcosm of life, if you want to say it that way, is that there's importance of having the work, but you also need to have that harmony of like taking the time out, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I would have to say, if there's something that I struggle with the most, it's probably that, the idea of being, it's cliche to say it, to be in the moment, if you will, but, I'm an action oriented person. But it's by being so action oriented, you can kind of really miss out on that Eastern way of thinking, which is, again, like, be right now, be aware of what you are doing right now, who you're talking with, just be totally present. And so that is absolutely something that I've been, trying to pursue myself to do a little bit more.
It's good. Yeah. I found and discovered this through like multiple different interviews where I start speaking this more and more, and I understand this a little more about myself, that I generally am pretty feeling based. And so sometimes I will wait to take action unless like if the feeling is not like strong enough or not clear enough. And that is that sometimes is not very good, because life will go on without you. Like in your line of work, the windows will continue to build up grime or whatever, regardless of what you think about them or what you feel towards them.
Right. That's a good point. They're always, like you said, it doesn't matter how I feel. They're gonna they're gonna continue to do what they do. Yeah, I like how you said that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was listening to you on the Mindful Money podcast, and the guy was like, really, Jordan, what you're doing is you're helping people see more clearly with the wealth letters and stuff. And I love so much how you're doing that with wealth letters, but you're also doing that with the window washing. And so it's sort of like we're covering two different things, but with two completely different like things. I don't know. It sort of makes you think of like a lot of those superhero shows, or Spider-Man, I think it's the Daily Bugle. He was like the newspaper reporter guy.
Sure.
And then so you have saving the day on multiple angles, like reporting something versus actually being at the scene of crime and solving it. So was this intentional, or how long is this how long has that been going? How long have you realized that? Or I don't
Yeah,
know, a
that's
little bit
funny.
about that.
Yeah, that's funny. No, that's a good point. I remember exactly what you're talking about on being on the Mindful Money podcast, and how you were saying, yeah, there is a seems to be a direct correlation with what you do, trying to brighten people's day, if you will, right? And then this project that I'm working on with the wealth letters, and no, that I mean, they weren't at all supposed to be, related, but with what I do on my daily basis with window washing, as you pointed out too, is, you know, I really do find that, yes, I can help people. I can make their day. I mean, nobody likes to clean their windows. It's a job that's just not what many people want to do. And for me to be able to maybe save them some time, cross something off their list, I know that really helps ease people's stress levels, and so that is a great thing. I guess part of me is like, it's wonderful that I can lower people's stress levels, but can I scatter my seeds a little bit more? Is there a way that I can kind of maybe reach just beyond saying, hey, I help people by getting their windows clean? And so that was kind of the idea behind the wealth letters. Originally it was started just for my daughters. I wrote them a letter to them personally, and my wife and a few other people in my sphere kind of really thought it was a really cool idea, and they said that they would want to contribute to it, and so it kind of blossomed into something a little bit bigger. And yeah, the idea behind the wealth letters just being that we have so much noise in our lives, from we got to get a job, we got to make money, we've got to support our family, we've got to have a certain status, whatever that may be. And while all of those things are absolutely needed and important, we kind of, as you and I just touched on, what I struggle with is I'm so action oriented that I miss out on truly the now today. And so, that's kind of was my vision with the wealth letters, was to say, hey, let's start to pull in different aspects of life and really examine, like, what do we need to do? What do we need to marry together to kind of really truly be in the now and have a passion for what we're doing in life?
It's beautiful that, we have the ability in the world we live in today to pull these things out of thin air. Like we're able to just, whereas before maybe ancestors or other people were like, oh, it'd be really cool to do that, or it'd be really cool to do this. It's like, well, I kind of need to do this and do that. And there really wasn't a way to expand that reach, like you were saying. But
Hmm.
yet we are able to do that in these days. And it's a really beautiful thing. There's this movie I remember watching when I was like, I don't know, 16 or 17. It was called The Letter Writer. And it's about this old guy that would go around and he'd write letters for people, and then he'd just give them out and about as he was going about his day. And they're just these really deep letters about kindness and stuff. And one of them, I guess this girl's having a really rough time. It's like in high school or something. And she tells him, like, how could you say those things about me? You don't even know me. And he's like, well,
Sure.
young lady, if I can say those things about you, I know you better than anybody else. And I sort of think that you writing all your wealth letters is the opportunity for you to explore yourself and these people and to pull out all these gems. And yeah, I think writing a letter is one of the most beautiful things ever, man. So the fact that you're doing it as a newsletter is magic to me. It's beautiful.
I appreciate that. Yeah. No, there is something like you said about writing a letter. I mean, so the letter that I wrote to my two daughters, they're both young. So I mean, this will be something that they read further down the line. But um, gosh, you're right. It really forced me to examine myself on the inside. I mean, it took me a long time to kind of think about what I wanted to say, the struggles, that I've gone through in life, hoping that I can pass along a little bit of wisdom that they can read and say, hey, maybe they can bypass some of the struggles that I've gone through by reading my letters someday. Um, but by doing that, it really made me think about not only what was important to me, but kind of what's going to be important for my family, for my kids as they age, my faith. There's so much that came into play when you really sit down and say, hey, I'm going to write a letter to someone, or an audience that truly is special to me. Yeah, you kind of just you think very differently when you put it on paper.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because I think in a way, scriptures are kind of like letters, or at least like Paul's letter to the Philippians and Corinthians and all that stuff. It's
Mhm.
written for that specific audience. And so for me, whenever I get a letter from somebody, I really try to treasure that thing, because I have one letter I got from my cousin when he was serving as a missionary, and I still treasure that thing like crazy. And I've read that at different points of my life, and it's given different perspective and different things have stood out. And yeah. Is there any letters that people have written for you that really stood out or helped you, or what's your other history of writing letters or receiving letters?
Yeah, you know, so my wife, now she's my wife, but when we were dating, um, there were times when, maybe we would be at a distance for some time, or whatever that would be. Just again, just kind of a one-page letter just to say what we're up to, how things are going. As you said, you kind of just treasure that. It's like it's not a texting on the phone, it's not an email, it's different than talking on the phone even. All those things are great, but to open up a handwritten, letter on just a notebook piece of paper, and to see the handwriting and maybe some little doodles that, my wife writes, and uh, yeah, there is something special about that. And so, um, you know, I've found that there is a little bit more meaning just for me when I know that somebody took the time to sit down and actually handwrite something. And now that's not to take away from all the ability that we have now with technology. Like, people have blogs, people have newsletters, and those, again, those are great because it is writing. It's just digitized writing, right? And so that can serve the same purpose. But again, there's something about seeing an actual physical handwritten letter. And I know we're all getting away from that now in our day and age, but it still is fun when you can kind of cherish some of those things.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that value doesn't like dim with time. There's a real telling power to it. I was hanging out with this guy that was living in Utah for a brief period, and there's this guy who, late 80s, his wife had died just a couple months prior, and he was in his 80s, still getting up at like 7 a.m. to like work outside and stuff and work on his passions. Like he's building these like these pots and stuff, and he's like nothing's gonna keep me from doing what I enjoy doing. And even though he sorely missed his wife, but he had like this letter that she'd written him like on his like wall, like with a picture of them, and it just was like mind-blowing because it was like before they got married and stuff. But it was just like there's something really special about that he wanted to hold on to, and he wanted everybody to see. And I think that is something telling about love, true love, is that you want others to see it. You want others to like not necessarily be inspired by it, but just help them know like this is possible, or that this takes work, but this is worth investing in. This is worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't say that better.
Yeah. So kind of bring us, because I know this started in like September is when the first one was, and then
Yep.
November, and kind of how are you doing this? How is it structured? Are you making any money with it right now? And I absolutely love reading it. I haven't been vocal enough about it, but it has some really, really good gems in it. I need to spend more time in it, but I think it's something that, like we said before, will get more valuable with time. But yeah, speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, not making any money with it or anything like that. I think to monetize it in the future, I mean, the hope would be that I would always want to be able to keep something like this free. I mean, that's kind of the whole idea is it's a passion project, right? To truly help people. And so to attach a monetary amount that someone would need to pay in order to read it or listen to it, because I do some live voice recordings too, just doesn't sit well with me. So, again, maybe in the future it would be if people felt called to donate, to further the project, or maybe some sponsors, things like that. So that's way down the line, of course. But yeah, as of now, how I'm structuring it, I've reached out to certain people that I asked to say, hey, is this a project that resonates with you? If so, would you be willing to write a letter? And that letter could be written to someone in your life. It could be written to yourself. It could be written to a general audience. And so there's been a few people who have done all of those things. So a person wrote a letter to themselves from the future, as an example. So it's wide open for how someone would want to take it. And that's the beauty of the project, is that I don't want it to be within guardrails for somebody. Basically the vision of it is to, have someone say, this is what I've come to find in life, as to kind of what does it mean? And it's called the wealth letters for a reason, because, you know, I struggle with the idea that I need more money, I need more possessions, that sort of thing. But I think that if we're all honest with ourselves, like that's kind of all at the top of our list, right? Whether we want to say it or not, it's absolutely one of the main things that we struggle with. And so that's kind of why that's around the focus of it. But if you read the letters, you can see that, yeah, a lot of people talk about money, or they talk about how to, be smart with your money. But you start to see some trends that really come in from people when they say, okay, you know, giving of that money is so much more important, or self-fulfilling, than making the money, and certain things like that. So there's that side of it. And I've also, I search or I curate letters that have already been written in the past. It could be from, someone way past in history. It could be a well-known person. But again, if it kind of aligns with what the vision of the wealth letters is, which is, purpose and meaning of life, I start to pull those letters in too. So that's kind of the framework for the project.
It's cool. And what came to mind when you're talking about the money aspect, it's like, well, for somebody that really wants to reach out to your audience specifically, well, then they could be like, hey, I'll put, a sponsor be like, hey, I want to put in this much money so I can reach, your audience if they saw that value. So I don't think there's really any danger there. And I think keeping it as like keeping it that pure thought of like, this is like a passion project, this is like open door for people, I think is really good. And when you're talking about that, I don't know, I probably I'll probably talk about this more with other people or make a solo episode about it, but like there's just this like aha moment in my brain, or like a connection, or like this internal laughter is like, oh yes, you're right on money, Jordan. Because I there's this guy that I found this podcast, and I was excited to listen to it, and it was like $2 an episode. I'm like,
Sure.
what in the world? What in the world? Like, there's no way. There's
Yeah, I
no
can't do that.
way. There's no
Yeah,
way this is that good. I'm
right,
sorry.
right. And so that's the whole thing, Dallin, is like, gosh, you and I talked a little bit about our faith, right? And I mean, we know that money and possessions and that whole thing, like that's the last thing that we should be coveting, right? And not saying that that's what we covet, but it's very easy to just kind of get lost in, you know, how much money do I have, or will I be able to retire in the future, and all that sort of thing. And again, at the end of the day, money truly is something that we all need to have it. I mean, we need to have it. So I want to make that precedence that it's not like I'm saying money's not important, but that kind of is like, if we can figure out that one first, figure out that money piece in terms of, yeah, let's be smart with our money, but let's understand how that truly plays a role in our life. If we can get that down, man, like everything else just kind of comes together.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. This come to my mind multiple times, so I guess I'll say it. It's like I think of like Johnny Appleseed, and I watched this video growing up. It's like American Tall Tales or something like that. But like the idea is that he spent all this time planting all of these seeds, and then is a long time later when people were able to harvest all the apples from them, and they had a great time. And in the video, I just have this vision in my mind right now of like him peeping through like these bushes and seeing all these people enjoying these apples and enjoying making apple pie and apple cake and all these different things. And I think of just that was his mission, was to enjoy that, and he didn't really want like the praise or anything. He just loved doing the thing. And so I think to a certain degree, it's like a lot of it is about keeping it like that. It's about giving. And I think that's really what God wants us to learn, is that there is so much joy in being able to give. Like if you're able to give, like that's such a beautiful thing. And sometimes if we overextend ourselves too much or something, then all of a sudden we're not able to give like we were before.
Right, right. No, absolutely. Side note, there's a in my letter to my daughters, I gave them a quote, and we were kind of talking about giving, and I said, the importance of giving. And there's a there's a guy who feels that his goal is that as he ages, he wants to give the percentage of his income at his age. So if he's 50 years old, he wants to give away 50% of his income, and that blows my mind to think that like somebody understands how important that is to give, and how that really furthers this world, and I find myself sometimes even being like, dang, could I do that? Would I want to hold on to my money so much that I don't want to give 50% away, right? And so it truly is, when you can understand that balance of giving versus receiving, it opens up a whole new door.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I'm pretty mind blown because you did pizza delivery for a little bit. You were a
Yep.
basketball coach for a little bit. Like,
Yep.
let's just go into that, because I haven't talked enough with basketball about basketball and stuff. So what did you learn from being a basketball coach that you apply to writing your newsletter? And were you coaching like high school varsity men's, or what were you
Yeah.
coaching?
So I started my first coaching age group that I did was like eighth and ninth graders, traveling basketball. I live in central Minnesota, so we have traveling basketball leagues in the winter time. So that's where I started. And then when I was in college, I got the opportunity to be an assistant coach at a junior college level there. So I spent a couple years there. And then I actually was a K-12 teacher. So I was a health and physical education teacher. That was my first occupation outside of school. And I coached the varsity basketball guys team there. So yeah, I mean, in terms of what you learn from coaching, boy, it's you you can't assume that what you say is being taken in by everybody. You know, it might sound very easy to me, such as if I said, Dallin, you gotta go over and you gotta set a screen, right? I mean, that to me as a basketball coach says like, come on, you know how to set a screen. Well, there's multiple players at the varsity level who have never been taught how to set a proper screen, or really what you're wanting. And so that just opened my eyes uh, to the idea that for us to just kind of assume that people understand what we're saying or that they're going to be on the same wavelength as us is we shouldn't just assume that. So we really need to be aware of the words we use, and kind of checking to see if there's understanding. Um, Also, at the end of the day, coaching is, man, especially basketball, it's a long season. I mean, you've got long days. If I'm a teacher and a coach, I mean, I'm usually at the school by 6 a.m., before school starts, and varsity basketball games don't start till 7:30. So you're not done till 9:30. You get on the bus, you go back to school. I mean, it is a long day. And that season runs from November till March, right? So it's a long season. And so it just really kind of made me realize how important my time is. I mean, I love coaching, right? Love it. But I also, when I study the time that I'm spending outside of my family or with my kids, it really does make you realize like, hey, I may enjoy this, but I have to understand the consequences of what am I missing out on too, you know?
Yeah, it's cool because I was a basketball manager, 3 years of high school. And so, I'd have days of going to seminary early and then, we'd have a basketball game and some of those schools were far away. And so we'd
Yeah.
get back
Yeah.
dead, like we're super tired and I crash, and
Yeah.
get back to the school at like 10:30. And that's when you have to like put away a couple things and then
Oh yeah.
it's crazy. And I can't even think about it from the coach's perspective, man. Just it's amazing.
Yeah. So it just, yeah, I mean, again, that just comes back to I've really I really cherished that going through that because I really realize now, you know, the times when I can get home at a decent time, let's say, and I can play with my kids or be with my wife. It's just like, man, you really do realize some of the more good things that you have in life.
That's good. So this definitely goes back to what you're saying about wanting to be more present in your life. So what do you think are some of the things you're the most like you're best at being present at? And like how does that help you? And then what are some things that you feel like you could be more present at or
Yeah.
or yeah.
Yeah. Um, you know, I feel like when I'm with my girls, like when I'm with my daughters, I do feel like uh I do a good job at being present. Like I'm there with them. We're playing. My two girls love um, playing with their doll houses and that sort of thing. So I feel like I'm in and I'm present when I'm with them. I would say my struggle is when I'm working during the day, when I'm out cleaning windows. Uh, I can find myself not in, and when I say enjoy cleaning windows, like for some people, they might say, well, how can you really enjoy that? But what I'm meaning is just being present in my day with what I'm doing and being thankful for what I have. I can find that when work gets tough, I can find my mind going to that whole, oh, I wish I could be making more money. I wish I could be, doing this or that. Or, I listen to all these podcasts of great people, right? And that's awesome. But at the same time and point, I have to be careful because now I'm hearing these people's success stories and that sort of thing. And I'm like, dang, I'm sitting here out in 90-degree heat on a ladder, cleaning windows. What am I doing wrong? Right. And so that's where I do feel I have to do a better job at balancing when I'm in the heat of the day, when I'm working during the day, to just be thankful for where I am, for truly what I have, because my mind can kind of go sometimes to saying, okay, why can't I be more successful, or why can't I be doing what this guy did that I'm listening to on the podcast, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. We always look at the things that we generally look at, the things that people have that maybe seem a little bit out of reach, like to a certain degree, like the guy who maybe was making money or talking on the podcast probably was in an air conditioned room. And like he was feeling that feeling that you wanted to feel in that moment. I think sometimes we want to change our state immediately, and I don't know. It's interesting because I can look back at certain times, like being a weed whacker, and I washed windows a little bit as
Yep.
part of another job I was doing. And I look back with gratitude on those things, but it is kind of tough in that moment to be like, is this really what I want to be doing right now? But I think when you can keep the longer perspective in mind a little bit, and also keep in mind God's perspective a little bit, what you imagine he sees, I think it's a little bit easier, but it can still be really, really difficult, man. Especially, yeah, it's the summer right now. It's hot.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, and you're exactly right. Just I know the right answer. The right answer is you know, that I am thankful, that I am blessed, all of those things. But like you said, in the heat of the moment, it's hard to rein that mind in to say, like, yeah, this is what I'm called to do. This is how I'm supporting my family. I am making a difference, right? It's very easy sometimes if you're having a hard day to really hold on to that.
Yeah, well, this has been quite a refreshing conversation. I look forward to keeping in touch with you, Jordan, because I see myself going in a similar path, maybe of like doing. I don't know. We'll just see. I'm open to it. I'm curious. But
Yeah.
how do we get in touch with you? And is there any like last minute advice you'd give for people about, being all in with their life?
Yeah, I appreciate you again having me on. I guess I might be biased. You might be a little bit biased too. But at the end of the day, I always ask myself, like, why are we here? Why were we designed to be here? Right? I mean, if we are here for no apparent reason, then what is the point, right? What is the point of me working hard and cleaning windows and wanting to raise my daughters to be good people, and or whatever that is? And so I challenge people to really say, like, to put an anchor in the ground and say, truly, why am I here? What was I made to do? Not necessarily for an occupation, but just why am I on this earth? Because if you don't have a handle on that, or have a true passion for that, then everything else in life just kind of is like, nah, whatever, So obviously I have, my faith is in God, as yours is too. So that's where my anchor is. And in terms of, if anyone wants to see more of the work that I'm doing with the wealth letters, just if you go to thewealthletters.com, you can take a look at what's going on there. And if you want to get in touch, it's easy to find my email there, or you can just comment, and I'd be happy to talk with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jordan. We'll definitely have all that stuff in the show notes, and just keep up the great work that you're doing. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dallin.
Yeah.